Greetings, my saplings. Today we will be discussing the Peaceminusone Air Force 1 Paranoise 2.0. Specifically, we'll be discussing some release info, some background information, how to cop, and of course, as usual, some resale predictions for it at the end of the video. The Peaceminusone Air Force 1 Paranoise 2.0 releases on November 25th. However, they already had a pretty large early drop just a few days ago. This was through a sneakers scratch drop. Highly suggested you follow my Twitter, KeithAdam10, and personals for you for future reference because I always do tweet out this stuff instantly, and luckily there was a ton of success off of this. So for future reference, again, be sure to follow so you don't miss out on this kind of random stuff. And of course, all Endurance members already know this stuff beforehand and are prepared beforehand. So if you're interested in staying updated for Restocks on Endurance, feel free to follow the Endurance Twitter account as well. But anyway, retail is $200 on this pair, which is quite high for an Air Force 1, but this obviously doesn't matter, and we'll discuss that later. The total worldwide stock on this white pair is 40,000 pairs, which is just barely over the pair last year in black. Also, keep in mind a couple of thousand pairs already released through the scratch drop, which already impacted the market. Regarding resale, we will cover that towards the end of the video as always, but now with the release info out of the way though, let's jump into some background information for these. Born on October 1st of 2016, relatively new, the fashion brand Peaceminusone envisioned a world at peace coming together, one, with a world deprived, minus, as a crossover between the real and the ideal. It is the materialization of pop star G-Dragon and his stylist Ji-Young's combination of imaginations and their act of wearing and doing whatever they want. And like his statement, I want to make a style which people would see me, Peaceminusone is G-Dragon's existence, the embodiment of G-Dragon himself. On November 23rd, 2019, 1 year ago today, we got our very first Peaceminusone Air Force 1 Paranoise. This pair features the same feature regarding how the sneaker's material would change with friction. This is where one can see the true artwork and subtle details that they have implemented on the sneaker. We also got to see a Korea exclusive pair, which was extremely limited to say the very least. Now today we receive nearly the same sneaker, the only difference being the first layer. Rather than black, it is now in white. So now with the background and release info out of the way, let's discuss how to cop these. First off, regarding any raffles, I already tweeted out a list for you guys on my Twitter, KeithAdam10, so make sure to check that out and enter them all. Also, if you happen to be watching this video and it's too late and a lot of them have closed, again, I highly suggest following my Twitter for future references for KeithAdam10 and personals for you on Twitter, both, not just for these raffles, but of course for restocks and shock drops in general, just like the scratch drop that I was mentioning earlier. And of course, be sure to enable post notifications on YouTube and subscribe. But anyway, moving on from raffles, and let's now discuss the first come first serve releases, and we'll be discussing them in chronological order, starting with the Europe drops. And although we haven't discussed resale yet, these are going to be worth reshipping if you're not from Europe, because there are going to be two sites we're mentioning that you must reship from if you're in the United States. So although most Europe retailers unfortunately did do raffles, as they have been for the past year, it is extremely likely that both Soulbox and Slam Jam will be doing random time drops between 3 a.m. Eastern Time and 6 a.m. Eastern Time, or 9 a.m. CET to 12 p.m. CET. In fact, both PIDs already loaded on the sites. If you have access to a Soulbox monitor, you may have a decent chance of copying manually there. If not, I would suggest following more sneakers and personals for you on Twitter. I would also suggest making accounts on there beforehand and being signed into an account on your browser. Regarding Slam Jam though, on the other hand, I honestly don't think you have a decent chance manually there. At least that's how it's been recently, sadly. Unless you do have access to a monitor, you might still have a slight chance there if bots do fail, which is kind of unlikely when it comes to Slam Jam lately. But anyway, both will certainly be very difficult drops, to say the least. Then, the best chance for Europe will be Nike sneakers at 9 a.m. CET. We'll discuss Nike sneakers more in depth when we discuss the US drop later in the video. Then, jumping to 6 a.m. Eastern Time or 12 p.m. CET, we should be seeing Dover Free Market London dropping. Although that's the normal time they're supposed to be dropping, they've actually been doing some drops in between 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time recently, or you could say 3 to 4 p.m. CET recently. So, if you don't see a drop at 6 a.m. Eastern Time or 12 p.m. CET, you should be looking out for those other times. Dover Street Market eFlash is Shopify, so expect it to be very difficult manually, but it's still worth a try. Of course, it's not going to hurt you because there's no other drops going on at this time anyway. Also, Dover Street Market does not require reshipping. They will ship to you worldwide. Expect a checkpoint captcha to solve after carting, and also, if you are planning to use a monitor, don't use add to cart links as they will not work for Dover Street Market eFlash specifically. Must add to cart manually when it comes to here. Then jumping to 8 a.m. Eastern Time, we have a potential undefeated drop. This drop is not confirmed, and I'm more or less just mentioning it for safety because they sometimes do drop. If they do end up hypothetically dropping, undefeated is Shopify, so it won't be easy, of course. Expect a checkpoint captcha, and you will also need to be signed into an account, so make sure before 8 a.m. Eastern Time you're already signed in, so you don't have to worry about that if they go live. Again, this drop isn't confirmed, but I would suggest being prepared for safety because there's nothing else to worry about at 8 a.m. anyway. Now, jumping to 10 a.m. Eastern Time, it's possible that Kith may potentially drop these, although I'm not able to confirm it just yet until we get closer to the drop at least. Kith is also a Shopify site, but normally there's actually pretty decent manual success here, primarily if you have access to early links, which you could just refresh at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So if you're in a group that does provide early links, I would highly suggest taking advantage of that. No account is required here, but I still suggest making one if you haven't anyway, and expect a checkpoint if they do end up dropping. Another potential 10 a.m. Eastern drop would be Concepts, although I think it's unlikely for this release. If they do end up dropping though, they should announce it on their Instagram the night before, so I would suggest following them if you're not already. If they do drop, make sure you're signed into an account as it is required for Concepts, just like Undefeated. And also expect a checkpoint captcha here as well. Now moving on to the last 10 a.m. Eastern drop that we'll be discussing, Nike Sneakers US. This is going to be your #1 chance at copying by far for these. Not only is the most stock allocated to Nike sneakers by a significant amount, but they also have been doing a pretty good job with making it more difficult for botters. Nike Sneakers US will be 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and Nike Sneakers Europe will be 9 a.m. CET, as mentioned earlier. Now, what's the most efficient way to cop off of Nike sneakers manually? Well, I made a full in-depth video regarding this, and everything inside out that you guys do need to know, so feel free to check it out here. However, for now, I'll just give you guys a brief rundown like I did in the last video. So this drop is going to be a Leo drop. Leo drops essentially look very similar to a first come first serve, but they're actually just a 2 to 3 minute draw in disguise. Leo stands for let everyone order, but it's not quite that simple either. When it comes to very hype drops like this, Off-White, Travis, Jordan 1 highs, etc., filtering of accounts is very high. In order to combat this, you do need to prime your Nike sneakers account similar to what you would do for Gmail accounts when trying to avoid fading captchas. When it comes to Nike sneakers accounts, in order to generate activity, you can favorite multiple products, click the share option, and simply go in for more drops in general, because believe it or not, taking L's actually increases your chances of winning. Another highly suggested method is watching the street sneakers videos on all of your accounts, and if you do need to make more accounts, just remember that Nike does require SMS verification, and you can't use the same phone number twice, so you will have to ask a friend to use their phone number and ask them for the verification code when they do receive it. However, if you rather not bother your friends, or you just want a significant amount of pre-verified sneakers accounts in general, feel free to check out my site TARS. The link for that is in the description below for pre-verified Nike sneakers or Adidas accounts. And finally, the last potential drop I did want to mention is at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. This will be Dover Street Market New York. Essentially the same setup as Dover Street Market London that we discussed earlier. Expect a checkpoint captcha, and don't use add to cart links from your monitor, just like we were talking about before. But that's essentially it for the how to cop portion of the video. Now let's move on to the resale predictions. So without a doubt, you can expect these to be very profitable with a great margin as well. Although retail is quite high for an Air Force One at $200, that doesn't matter at all. Demand is very high on these, just like the prior pair, which is currently selling for around $500 to $600 still. Furthermore, stock is also very low, as we discussed earlier. Another thing worth noting is that these may not see the usual dip in price post-drop, since there are a ton of people already trying to quick flip these from the scratch drop who are anticipating a drop in price. Regardless though, it's a 100% cop, full throttle of course. But anyway, that will conclude it for today. Feel free to leave a like if you did enjoy, or you perhaps learned a thing or two. Also, subscribe and enable post notifications just to stay 100% updated on all hyped releases. Also, feel free to check out the links in the description for reliable, fast residential proxies and pre-verified Nike and Adidas accounts. Last but not least, make sure to follow Keith Adam 10 and Personals for You, so you guys always stay up to date for urgent info like what I was mentioning earlier today. With that, I'll see you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your day.